This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
My fellow Americans, welcome. It's Eric Erickson here, and I am delighted to have you with me across the nation, from coast to coast, no less. The phone number is 877-973-7425, and I'm happy to have you with me. It is an open line Friday, so you can call in 877-973-7425. You may or may not get on. It's not a free pass to just call in here. We do screen the calls, but I hope you might consider texting the word Army to 33777 and becoming one of the activists for the show. It's also a great way to keep in touch. So, for example, next year we're going to take the gathering. We're going to move it around the country. We're going to do smaller ones, multiple ones in states around the country, and the way we'll contact people and do the event is through our new contact portal for our audience. But I need you to text the word Army to 33777. You'll get a link back. Fill out the form with your info. We just need your name and zip code, really, and we'll be able to contact you in your email address. Okay. I want to talk about an email I got from listener Chip. So Chip from Alaska writes this. I'm tired, bone freaking tired. I've been in politics since 1970, and I'm ready to check out. I'm old enough to remember when the presidential campaigns lasted maybe a year, and now it never ends. 9 straight years of endless campaigning, excuse-making, whining, yelling, and threatening has gotten me to the point I'm about ready to not bother anymore. I'm too old to waste my last few good years overlooking toddlers throwing poo at each other. My choices are totalitarianism on one side and an impulse-driven, impulse-controlled, challenged man-child on the other, and neither side listens. I don't think I'm alone. Besides venting my spleen, my point is this. If the system has lost me, a long-term invested voter, it needs to be reconsidered or replaced. A civil society, much less a republic, can't survive this. I suspect Chip speaks for a whole lot of you. This is a tangent, and it's not at the same time. I am exhausted. I am tired in ways I haven't been in a long time. Haven't slept well this week to begin with. But the gathering wore me out. And the last couple of years, I took the Monday off to recover. And this year, I had to hit the ground running on Monday, and then I had a dinner on Tuesday that lasted until after 11 o'clock. And it's just been nonstop leading up to me moving my kid into her dorm this afternoon. I'm really, I can't remember the last time I felt physically tired. Like, it's not a sleepy tired. It is my brain spinning? Why won't my legs work tired? I'm tired. It is intellectually draining to sit on a stage for 2 days interviewing 2+ dozen people, having to listen to what they say, because I don't pre-write questions. The question comes to me as they're sitting in the chair. And that answer to that question leads to the next question, and that answer leads to the next question. And along the way, I'm thinking of other avenues to take in case the conversation dies out, and then the 30 minutes is up, and it's on to introduce the next person, and 30 minutes with them. It is exhausting, and I am tired. And I'm looking forward to sleeping tonight and sleeping in tomorrow. I may not get out of bed tomorrow. I'm just tired. On top of that, I'm getting a little bit of a cold just with the weather changing and humidity. And, you know, when a hurricane blows through and the barometric pressure gets out of whack, my lungs sometimes get out of whack, the ongoing damage from the blood clots. But I'm tired. Now you add in the presidential campaign. And I am where Chip is. I am just tired. And I suspect you all are. The other day I wrote, when it was 90 days left in the campaign, my wife said, the best thing I have read from you in a long time was that we have less than 90 days before this blankety blank is over. The last 8 years have been a nonstop, grueling, punishing. Everybody's mad at you because you're supposed to pick a team, and when you pick the team, you're not allowed to criticize the team, and that's not my nature. Most of you, it's not your nature. If you think Trump's done something dumb, you want to say it. The hardcore Trump supporters then call you a traitor. You hate the Democrats. The Democrats want to know why you're destroying the country, you racist, for voting for Trump. All sides are convinced their strategy is to exhaust us and make us bend the knee. And all I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, sincerely so, and again, by saying this, I'm going to make some of you mad. I know, because I've said it before and I get hate mail every time I do. It is your choice to be that invested in the campaign. You don't have to be. You'll be better off if you aren't as invested. Because the reality is, it doesn't matter which side gets elected, there's going to be a narrow majority one way or the other in Congress, and a whole lot of it's not going to change. And to the extent it changes, a lot of it can be undone by executive order. It's the way the system works. But there's also something else here. And that is, it is an intentional campaign strategy these days, not to give you hope to vote for something, but to actually make you mad at the other side to keep you from voting for them. See, we're in a very narrow race right now. There are not a lot of undecideds out there. And the campaigns have decided it's easier to get the independents to not vote by aggravating them and burning them out than to give them a reason to vote. Takes a wild card out of the equation. So the Harris people and the Trump people, they go very, very nasty at each other with no real reason to vote. And the result is that some people will sit it out and say, yeah, pox on both their houses. And that's fine. They don't care. The Democrats in particular, because the Democrats believe their base is bigger than the Republican base. And because the Democrats believe their Democratic base is bigger than the Republican base, the more people they can alienate to stay home, the better off they are. They just have to turn out their base. And then there are those who are convinced, this is also by design, there is a segment of the public that believes that one side or the other is so awful that the other side must be supported to stop the side they hate. That's where David French is. He believes that Donald Trump and Trumpism are so bad for conservatism, he must vote for a candidate who despises everything he says he believes in order to stop Trumpism, which supports many of the policies that he supports, but the character is so terrible they can't be rewarded and they must be punished. Now, let me repeat myself from the other day, and I got to be real careful here, because some people will exert this to attack me, to hurt me, by saying I'm trying to encourage you not to vote for Trump. That is not my goal here. I've given the man money. I really do actually want to stop Harris and Walz. I think they would be too far left, and that they would do things through the administrative state, and their staff, if they left, would embed within the administrative state. It'll take years to clean them out. Better to not get them in there in the first place. But there are a lot of people who think, I don't like either one of these guys, but I got to pick. I gotta. Who do I hate the most? I'll go vote against them. To those of you who are in that boat, could I just suggest to you that actually don't do that? Don't vote. Go show up on election day, but don't vote on the top line. Avoid it. Now, let me explain my thinking here to you. We are in a very, very close election, a very close election. It's very narrow margins, and the race is essentially tied. And the Harris team and the Trump team, they're not really fighting over the pool of undecided voters. They're trying to convince the undecided voters that you got to vote for me to stop the other side, or just don't go vote. But because American politics now is so divided and we are so 50-50, that the share of the greater the share of voters who decide, screw it, I'm not voting at all, the greater that share has the power to change the election cycle. This is an election that's going to be won by about 50,000 votes. But if 1 million Americans show up on Election Day and vote, but skip the presidential line, that million vote undervote for the presidency, finding those people and seeing what it will take to get them to vote becomes a meaningful constituency and task. So if you hate Donald Trump, you don't like Harris, but you despise Donald Trump, if you really want to change the political course of the country, don't go vote for Harris. Just go vote and leave the presidential line blank. Because that will be the most significant bit of data that both political parties take. That people bothered to show up and vote but didn't vote for president because they didn't like either candidate. If you despise Kamala Harris and you don't like Donald Trump, same thing. Don't go vote for Trump to stop Harris. Just don't go vote and leave it blank. Leave the top line blank. Because in a very narrow race where the margins are tight, expanding the pool of voters can give one side an edge. So when they see that 1 million, 2 million, 5 million people showed up on Election Day but refused to vote for president, that becomes a constituency in a regular routine where elections are won by 50,000 to 100,000 people voting. Having 5 million people sitting on the sidelines, suddenly you're like, this is my path to victory. Let me go find out why those people refuse to vote. And when they're surveyed, I didn't vote because I thought both sides were terrible and no one wanted to give me a reason to vote for them, just a reason to vote against the other side, that's going to force the dynamics of politics to change. Stewardship. We don't often talk about voting as a form of stewardship. For a Christian, you understand stewardship. There's a religious, theological meaning to stewardship. We're to steward the planet. We're to steward our families. God has given us these things. We're to take care of these resources until God calls them back. Voting is an act of stewardship. But for secular people and non-believers, voting as well is an act of stewardship. You are looking to advance the country into the future, and you do so by exercising good stewardship over the country while you're here for the next generation. And the stewardship of your vote is a power that you have. And so if you hate both sides, instead of saying I'm voting for this one to stop that one, show up and say I'm not voting at all on that line. I'm a citizen. I'm going to exercise my stewardship. I'm going to come vote for governor or senator or congressman or local government or nonpartisan races, whatever they are on your ballot in your state. But I'm just not voting for president. I don't like either one. I can assure you, as someone who's run political campaigns, that becomes a powerful, powerful signal that both sides have to change course. That both sides need to provide candidates who are going to give you a reason to vote for them, not just against the other side. It's also a way more moderating influence. I mean, consider my friend David French, who's decided to vote for Kamala Harris because he hates Trumpism. He hates Trump. He wants to burn it out of the party. How do you think Kamala Harris is going to interpret that vote? She's not going to know it's David French. She's going to see she got more votes than Trump. What she's going to see is that her policy positions are popular. That's how she's going to interpret it. And so what you're doing by voting for her to stop him is you are actually incentivizing her radicalization. You are incentivizing her to move further left because she's moved left and she got your vote, and she's going to interpret it in the pattern of how she moved. So she moves left, you vote for her. It's an endorsement of her moving left, or worse, in your case, it is that there's nothing she could say or do to stop you from voting for her. You hate the other side so much. So what's she going to do? She's going to try to remind you how much you hate the other side. Is that going to give you something to vote for? You've already made it clear you're a cheap date. You're just trying to stop the other side. So she has no incentive to moderate. She has no incentive to change her positions. She has no incentive to be more mainstream. I am exhausted by this presidential race. I am ready for it to be over. Most of you are as well. For those of you who think I got to pick one side or the other to stop the other side, to stop the side I hate, no. Your strongest message would be to not vote. Go show up and vote on Election Day, fill out the ballot, and leave that one blank. Your undervote in that race will be the most impactful, most powerful thing you can do and greatest signal you can send to Washington, D.C. that the candidates for president must change. If you want to vote for Trump, God bless you. Go stop Kamala Harris and vote for Donald Trump. You want to vote for Harris? Okay, I disagree. Go vote for Harris. But if you hate them both, go show up on Election Day, cast your ballot, and leave it blank. And both sides will see so many people voted, but there was such a massive undervote that both sides will recognize to get those people back. It's a constituency that could win the election. We got to figure out why they stayed home. And when they find out why you stayed home, that will do more to force the candidates to get back on a message of for me as opposed to against the other side. That will fundamentally reshape American politics for the better.
Way to eat a tea. You're listening to an ad for PC Game Pass. Want new games on day one like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle? How about living out your Sims life with EA Play? We're talking high-quality PC games all for one low monthly price. We got you. Learn more at xbox.com/PC Game Pass or click the banner. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle available December 9th, 2024. Game catalog varies by region and over time. Okay, that's the ad. You can go back to doing whatever you were doing now.
Howdy, welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. You should know the Kamala Harris ads are now taking over even conservative talk and Fox News. They've got so much money coming in the door. They're just spending money everywhere. And my goodness gracious, I'm getting text messages from people from my flagship station saying, why am I hearing Kamala Harris ads? Y'all, she's dumping money everywhere at this point. She is convinced that she can convince people either to sit it out or vote for her to stop Trump. I don't know. A lot of people are continuing to ask me, do you really believe that she's going to win Georgia? I actually don't think she is. Now, Trump, with his fighting with Brian Kemp, he could hurt himself with Georgia Republicans. It's not that Kemp's not going to go help him. He's going to do whatever he can to turn out the Republican vote because he's worried about the state legislature in Georgia. But I do believe that there are some Republicans in the state who might say, no, you know what? I refuse to go vote for him now. He attacked my guy who I like more than him. He's reminding people. The damage from that statement in Atlanta was, you can't underestimate it. That being said, I really, really, really do think that Donald Trump is going to win Georgia because of Lake and Riley. So keep that in mind. I think he wins Georgia in 16 electoral college votes. Now, I got to tell you about Hillsdale College. In fact, it's been a while since I've been there. So I'm going to go to ericforhillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com. You can support Hillsdale Mission 365 days a year. They've got a video for you to watch if you're interested. Hillsdale doesn't accept a penny of state or federal taxpayer funding, even indirectly in the form of student grants or loans. So your monthly gift defends liberty 365 days a year and helps advance Hillsdale's long-term mission. Month in, month out, every year. It's a tax-deductible donation. They do not take state funding. They do not take federal funding. They don't take federal student loans. You can get Imprimis as a free gift, and you can take the free online courses, and you can help fund the educations of graduate and undergraduate students and restore education excellence to K through 12 education, all with a simple gift to Hillsdale College by going to ericforhillsdale.com. They offer so much to so many. They're a wonderful school. ericforhillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. So listener Dorsey emailed and he said, you've been suckered into focusing on the faces of the candidates. Vote for the policies you want. Don't misdirect the voters. It's the economy, immigration, crime, defense. The problem is, I replied to him and said, I actually think most voters have become emotional. They're less rational. They don't care about the policies. They care about the feels. And that's part of the problem here is that's why Kamala Harris can convince someone to say, well, you don't like Donald Trump, so vote for me. Ignore the policies. I mean, look at David French, for example, is voting for Kamala Harris, not because of her policies, but because he hates Donald Trump, his character and what he thinks the MAGA movement represents. Never mind that Trump's policies are actually fairly run-of-the-mill Republican, ultimately. It's the feels. And I'm with Dorsey that it should be the policies, but for too many Americans, it's the feels. And you got to understand that you're being played emotionally and pulled emotionally by both sides. Both sides are doing it. Now, I want to call your attention. We had a guy call the other day, had an older gentleman call. Some of you did not believe his story, that his daughter and family were flying from Washington, D.C., to Atlanta, Georgia, on a Delta flight, and a man came through security without a ticket, followed them through the airport, including into the bathroom, and then again, without a ticket, somehow got onto their flight to Atlanta, sat next to them, and that's when the daughter of this gentleman who called whispered to the flight attendant that she thought there was a problem. Turns out the guy didn't have a ticket, and he was evicted from the plane, and they had to evacuate the plane. Got several emails from people saying, I just can't believe this story happened. Well, guess what? Someone must have been listening and went and looked it up, because now USA Today has broken the story, and now several other media outlets, including the Today Show on NBC, has run this story. Lauren Bitton said something seemed wrong the moment she left TSA on the way to her flight. She and her husband, Nathan, and their two children, ages 9 and 6, were flying home to Georgia on Delta from Washington Dulles International Airport on August 2nd. Bitton said a man who was near her family at the checkpoint started following them to the gate. At one point, she said the man even entered into the women's restroom while Bitton was in there with her daughter. My heart sunk down into my stomach, she told USA Today. While our children, we were trying to create the perception they were safe. Benton said the man continued to follow them even when her family got on the plane during early boarding and sat down in their row. At that point, she knew she needed to say something as her kids became more anxious. She called over a flight attendant and discreetly informed them of the situation. Ultimately, the man was escorted off the plane. He did not have a boarding pass for the flight Benton was on with her family. Now, here's the thing. When her father called in and told us the story, he said he didn't have a ticket. He did have a ticket, but the ticket was for a different flight that same day. So he was able to make it through TSA, but he was able to make it through TSA because he did have a ticket, and that ticket was for that day, but it was a different flight at a different time. The man didn't have a ticket for that Delta flight. The plane had to be evacuated and security was swept. So we actually did have a number of people who emailed and said, this story sounds completely implausible. Here it is in the newspaper. We now have the names. We got the data, Delta as well, and the TSA confirming that this, in fact, did happen. And Delta has launched an investigation into how it happened. My guess is that the person checking them through the gate to get on the plane saw this group of people and assumed they were traveling as a family and miscounted how many tickets they had scanned. That's total speculation on my part, but that seems to be the easiest way to do it. You're swiping, they're all traveling as a pack because this guy clustered in with them as they got on the plane, caused all sorts of problems. What a wild story. Now I want to pivot to California. We're working on a few more stations out in California. We got a big one out there, KST in Sacramento. And in Sacramento, Democrats are divided on Proposition 36. As you are aware, one of the worst ideas in human history, one of the absolutely worst ideas in human history, is allowing individuals to put ballot propositions. Now, some of you may think it's a good idea. I think it's horrible. I do know our founders insisted we be a representative democracy. And the closer we get to an actual democracy, the more often the mob takes over. Not the Sicilian mob, but the mob of voters. Direct democracy is a terrible idea. Why? Because people are stupid. And people decided in 2014 to add Proposition 47 to the ballot in California. And Kamala Harris, as the Attorney General in California, gave it a favorable write-up. The Attorney General in California had to write the write-up to describe the legislation and describe what the proposition meant, and she gave it a very favorable write-up to free up police resources. That's how they spun it and got it on the ballot, and people voted for it. Proposition 47 was actually the criminal justice ballot initiative that downgraded theft and drug crimes from felonies to misdemeanors in California. The voters of California are hoping now to correct Proposition 47, which is the legislation that stops people from getting arrested for shoplifting if they steal less than $900 at a time. What's dividing Democrats is that state-level Democrats, like the Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas and the Governor Gavin Newsom, they don't want to roll back Proposition 47. They want to keep it. But the mayors, the Democratic mayors, London Breed, the San Francisco mayor, Todd Gloria, the San Diego mayor, they're campaigning for rolling back Proposition 47 with Proposition 36. They're being joined by the League of California Cities, the California Contract Cities Association, and a number of other lobbying groups. San Jose's mayor, the Sacramento district attorney, and others, the Elk Grove mayor, they're all launching committees to support Proposition 36. The Santa Monica mayor, Phil Brock, says we see the consequences on the ground every day. Look at Mayor Breed, Mayor Mayen, mayors down here in Southern California. We're exasperated, we're frustrated, and so many days we feel helpless. We need some help. We need some assistance. When prosecutors and big box retailers came forward earlier this year with their initiative to restore harsh penalties for nonviolent crimes, Gavin Newsom and legislative leaders began working to strike it from the ballot. After failing to persuade the initiative's proponents to drop their quest and abandoning plans to promote an anti-crime measure on their own, California's top Democrats are leading the charge against Proposition 36. They warned the measure will take California back to an era of mass incarceration and cost taxpayers millions of dollars, but it hasn't stopped mayors and local office holders from coming out in favor of the initiative. Yes, on Proposition 36, the main campaign committee supporting the initiative has put out a steady drumbeat of endorsements from local level politicians, including many Democrats. My great fear is that by decriminalizing low-level crime, we have allowed people's conditions to deepen and worsen, Mayor Mayen said in an interview. Local officials and organizations that represent them say there are clear reasons for the measure's strong support on the local level. They're less insulated from the effects of retail theft and drug issues than politicians in Sacramento, giving them more on-the-ground perspective on how dire the situation is. Cities feel like they're the first line of defense when it comes to public safety, says Marcel Rodart, executive director of the California Contract Cities Association, which endorsed the measure. They're the ones their constituents call. They don't call assembly members. They don't call state senators, so they bear the brunt of this. Isn't this an interesting dynamic? The state Democrats in California are opposed to cracking down on crime. The local Democrats want the crackdown. Now, this gets back to the broken window theory, what Rudy Giuliani used in New York City back before he was a joke. As an aside, can I just say it was a really, really, really missed opportunity by Kamala Harris and Tim Walz when they made their announcement in Philadelphia that they didn't do so at the Four Seasons Landscaping Company. They totally should have gone. Actually, they should have gone to the real Four Seasons and said, we're here where Rudy thought he was. Oh, my gosh. That was such a disaster when Rudy shows up at the Four Seasons Landscaping Company and really did think he was going to the Four Seasons Hotel to have a press conference. And, you know, to this day, there are people who will justify, oh, he knew right where he was going. He's a smart guy. He used to be. His friends are concerned now about his drinking and possible dementia. It's just sad, America's mayor, to see him wind up beclowned in the current state. But nonetheless, when he was mayor, he was a very good mayor. And Rudy Giuliani cracked down on crime in New York with the broken window theory of crime, which the left has worked very hard to propagandize against. There have been copious left-wing studies saying it doesn't really work, and yet the real-world data shows it does. The broken window theory of that crime is very simple. When you see an abandoned building with a broken window, when you see a building with a broken window, and that window does not get fixed, it indicates the building is abandoned. And pretty soon, the building with a broken window is going to be home to the homeless and home to the drug dealers, and eventually become a hotspot for crime. If you enforce the small laws, like fix the window, you don't have to enforce the big laws. The problem in California is that what Proposition 47 did is it turned crimes that had been big crimes into small crimes, and no one could enforce them. So if you walked into a Target and you shoplifted $900 worth of stuff, you used to be carted off to jail. Now they let you walk out with all the stuff and you don't get punished. And what's that done? It's incentivized more shoplifting. As long as it's under $900, you're fine. It's incentivized the shoplifting. It's caused a problem. Drugs on the streets because people are shooting up on the streets and leaving their needles behind. It causes a health crisis, but it's considered now a misdemeanor. And because it's a misdemeanor, the police don't enforce it. They don't cart the drug addicts off the streets. So the streets get overwhelmed with the drug addicts shooting up on the streets, leaving their syringes for kids to step on. It goes back to Kamala Harris and her $25,000. Kamala Harris wants to give new home buyers $25,000 to put down a down payment on a home. You give them $25,000, the price of a new home is automatically going to go up by $25,000 to capture that subsidy plus the fair market price. In addition, the people who are getting the government's $25,000 are going to be far less likely to be able to make monthly payments. As caller Chad said in the first hour, look at all the people who got government subsidies during COVID lockdowns. They sat home, got government money, went out, bought themselves a car. Now they can't make the car payments and the cars are being foreclosed on. This is all the same thing. It's all the spillover effects. It's obvious. When you say that shoplifting $900 is no longer a felony, people are going to shoplift up to $900 and there's nothing you can do about it. They know they won't be prosecuted. So it's had spillover effects now. It's caused crime to increase. Think about the other day, there was a huge story about how we're seeing drops in violent crime around the country. What caused the original spike? It was people sitting it out on COVID. Idle hands, idle times, going to crime. After COVID, the situation exasperated and got out of hand with prices going up. It was easier for people to shoplift than buy stuff, knowing that they could get away with it, knowing they couldn't be enforced, knowing they couldn't be arrested. So here come the mayors in California. They've had enough. They realize they're on the front line. They got to do something. They got to stop it. So what are they doing? They're proposing Proposition 36. They got a mass array of Democratic and Republican mayors, city councilmen, and others saying we need to undo Proposition 47. And the only people who are opposed are the defense attorneys who represent the criminals and the governor and the assembly speaker who are completely unfazed by it. Remember, when a Target worker at the cash register tried to explain to Gavin Newsom about the shoplifting and what was happening as he saw people walking out, she said, well, it's the governor. He opposes it. He supports this. And he tried to get the woman fired for telling the truth. Couldn't accept responsibility. It's time to stand up and strike down Proposition 47. It's an interesting divide in California and a precursor of the fights to come on the Democratic side. Amazing the Democrats are being divided on should we enforce the law or not. All right, I got to move on. Americans for Prosperity. They're the nation's largest leading grassroots organization in the country. They knock on doors. They teach you to knock on doors. They mobilize people to vote. They mobilize people to take action. We're actually using a company they use for our contact portal with our audience. And they use it very effectively to motivate people to vote and get you to sign up. They've got chapters in almost every state, and they'll teach you how to be a door knocker. They'll teach you how to persuade your neighbors. They'll give you all the information and insight to be the smartest person in your circle of friends. They'll teach you how to go to your state government or your local government to advocate for school choice, to advocate for families, to advocate for deregulation, to advocate for common sense conservative solutions to the problems that plague us. All you have to do is go to americansforprosperity.org. americansforprosperity.org. You go sign up with AFP. You join one of the largest grassroots organizations in the country. They've got chapters in almost every state. So go to americansforprosperity.org today. Hello there. It is Eric Erickson here. Let me get to Renata's phone call from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm great.
Good. Yes, I was calling because you were talking about the ballot and how a lot of people, of course, vote against the other, candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And, everybody's exhausted. You're exhausted. And I wanted to interject some humor from the very beloved Oklahoman Will Rogers.
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
In 1935, June 9th, he stated, in this country, people don't vote for, they vote against. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's just nothing new under the sun. And when you were talking about it, and in this, very, very negative environment we're in, as I was home, I stumbled across my Will Rogers book, and it brought me great humor and lightheartedness. Also sharing that there's really nothing new under the sun. He also talked about on July 8th, he stated in 1928, mind you, the platform will always be the same. Promise everything, deliver nothing.
Yeah. Look, he's got some great, look, I've got to let you go there, but thank you for that. You're right. Although there was a time in this country where the politicians did try to give you a theme. I mean, Clinton was the bridge to the 21st century. George W. Bush, hope was on the way. And now we've just got, vote for me, the other side's a communist. Vote for me, the other side's a totalitarian. I'm tired. We've only got about 80 days left. We will survive, and we'll do it all over again in 4 years, even though some of you think the country's coming to an end. It's not. We're just not going to like it if Harris wins.